Welcome to the first video for Fundamentals of Production, your final project. This is the bag video. In this video, we're going to talk about how to lay out and cut out your pattern so that you can get started on making your bag. But before we get started on the actual laying it out and cutting out the pattern part, we've got some other stuff we want to take care of first. So first off, instructions. You have pattern pieces that will be provided for you, and your first step is to take these pattern pieces and make a copy of them on the brown paper provided for you in class. That is not shown in this video for the sake of time, but know that is something that is not seen in this video and you will have to do is make a copy of these. The reason for that is so that if for some reason you need to do some cutting at home, you have the pattern pieces at home. You have the pattern pieces to reference and come back to while you're working on the project and putting it together. Let's say you forgot to put a mark on a pattern piece and you start to put together and you really need that mark, so then you have your paper pattern with you that you can then get the correct mark off of. So that is your first step, is you're going to take all of these pattern pieces and make a copy of them on the brown paper provided for you in class. Okay? The next thing that we're going to talk about is the fabric that you need. So when your bag is done, you're going to have, it's going to look like this. This is what your bag looks like. The pattern has different notations on it, and we'll go over that in a moment, for your outer fabric or your fashion fabric and the lining. So you need two different fabrics for your project because the inside needs to be a different pattern than the outside, or different fabric. Now, if you choose to make your entire bag out of all of the same fabric, that's okay. You just need to give me a good reason for why it's all the same, because we do want to see these different parts and how different things are colored. It also makes putting the bag together a little easier. It's tricky in this stage where you're having to lay everything out, but it does make it easier when you put it together when you have two different pieces, okay? So that is something that you'll need. You need approximately, if you decide to buy the fabric yourself instead of using what is provided in the lab, you need approximately 1 yard for the outside fabric and 1 yard for the inside fabric. So you need 2 yards total at minimum to put this whole thing together to lay out all of your pieces, okay? Now, moving on. We're gonna look step by step at every piece in just a second. Ooh, my camera just did not want to focus there for a second. But before we get started on that, I have some really, really important tips that I want you to hear at the beginning of this series. First of all, this step, the laying out your pattern and the cutting it, don't rush it. This is, of all of the steps that you're going to do to put this project together, this is the one that I want you to be the most meticulous about. I don't want you to rush it, because if you rush this stage, it's going to make everything else, all of the steps that come after, significantly more difficult. So don't rush laying out your pattern and cutting it. You're going to lay out all of your pattern pieces before you ever cut them, okay? The other thing is, give yourself enough time to do that. I have already cut out all of my pieces by the point of this recording. You'll see it in a little bit. But it took me 45 minutes to copy all of these pieces onto my fabric, okay? And it took me approximately 20 minutes to cut everything out. Now, I am skilled at this. I've been doing this for a while, so it's gonna take me less time than it will take you. So give yourself at least 2 hours to get through this whole process, okay? Don't rush it. It needs to be meticulous, all right? And as you go through this video series, I highly recommend that before you do the step that's next, you completely watch the video for that step before you begin. All of these videos are on YouTube. You can speed it up. That's actually what I recommend, is speed up the video, watch through all the steps before you come to class, just so you have an idea of what you are supposed to be doing, and then go back and watch the video and do the steps along with the video. But you can always speed me up. I know these videos seem kind of long, but you can speed me up to get an idea of where you're headed and then move forward. Okay, so those are my major tips to be successful on this bag project as a whole, and specifically this series of steps, the laying out and cutting your pattern. All right, so now we're gonna go through each pattern piece by piece. There are 10 pattern pieces total. Now it's going to equal more fabric pieces than 10, but there are 10 total. So every pattern piece should have a number that corresponds to the number in your instructions. So piece number 1 is this one. This is the front and the back. You need to cut 2 pieces of your outer fabric and 2 pieces of your lining. The seam allowances are all marked here. So let's take a look at what that is in the back. So this pattern piece are these parts on the back. The front, the back of the outside, and the front and the back of the inside. That's what that piece does. You're gonna have 4 fabric pieces for that one. Okay? Piece number 2. This is your pocket. Okay? You only need 1 pocket. Now, this is a piece that is optional. The pocket is not optional, but what fabric you cut it out of is optional. You can cut it out of the same fabric as the outer layer, or you can do a contrasting fabric. I have chosen to do a contrasting fabric for my pocket. Okay? So this is inside or outside fabric. Doesn't matter, whichever one you want. You only need 1 piece, because this piece right here. Okay? All right. Piece number 3. These are the bag sides. Again, this is a piece that you're going to have 4 total fabric pieces cut out by the time you're done. 2 outer pieces and 2 lining pieces. Okay, so on the bag itself, there's 1, 2 of the outer, 1, 2 of the inner. Okay, so the outside essentially is a rectangle, and so is the inside. Inside, outside. Okay, so piece number 3 are your sides. You need 4 pieces total, 2 of your outside fabric, 2 of your lining. All right, piece number 4 is the bottom of the backpack. So if you notice here on the bottom, get my hands in here so you can see, the bottom has its own shape. For this pattern piece, we need 1 fabric of the outside and 1 fabric of the inside. So you can see the outside there, and the inside is here. Okay? So piece number 4 equals 2 pieces of fabric. All right, piece number 5. This is really big. Okay? So the piece number 5 are the straps. You need just 2 of these, and these can be of your outside fabric or your inside fabric. Totally up to you. Or a 3rd fabric if you want. I don't care. Your design choices. But you have 2 of these, and they are the straps. Okay, so 1, 2 of whatever fabric you want. It can be the outside or the inside. And honestly, any of these pieces that it is inside or outside, you could even choose to have a 3rd fabric if you wanted. I don't care. But just make sure you calculate that you have enough fabric to do that in a 3rd piece. Okay? All right, that was piece number 5. Number 6 is really small. This is the grab handle, and you only need 1 of these. Now, the pattern does say 1 of the outer fabric, but if you'd like, this can be an inside fabric as well. It can be the same as your lining or same as your outer. The grab handle is this part. So on the back, you've got your big straps, and you've got 1 handle on the top. It's kind of like that little grab handle at the top of a regular backpack. So that's this piece. Piece number 6, this piece. You only need 1 of those. All right, piece number 7. Piece number 7, you only need to cut 1 of these, but this is cut on the fold. So what you'll do is you'll lay it down on your fabric, you'll trace it out plus your seam allowance, then you're going to, on this side where it says cut on the fold, you're going to take it and flip it and continue drawing it. So it's a giant rectangle, but it's cut on the fold. Remember, in theatrical pattern making, we don't actually cut through 2 layers of fabric, we cut through 1. So anytime we have a cut on fold, we have to lay it down, trace, flip, trace. You'll see me do that in the video. I will probably at that point when I'm doing these pieces that are cut on fold, because we have 2 of them, I will slow that part down so that you can see me do that flip. Okay? So again, this is the drawstring, and there's only 1 piece. You only need to cut this 1 time. This is the casing for the drawstring. So the casing for the drawstring is this piece right here that's going to go around the inside edge. This is the drawstring, and the drawstring goes inside another piece. That's what piece number 7 is this casing. Okay? Piece number 8 is the flap. This one, the instructions say to cut 1 of the outer and 1 of the lining. If you'd like, they can be the same thing. They can both be outer, or it looks really nice for it to be an outer and the lining as well. Okay, so the bag flap is this piece. One lining, one outer. Okay, so that is what this piece is. Also notice it has a curved edge. Whenever we go through the laying out and cutting process, I'm going to show you how we do a seam allowance around a curved edge, because all of the rest of the pieces have been straight for the most part around here. Okay, that was piece number 8. Okay, piece number 9. This is the pocket binding. So I'm going to show you where this is, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about this piece, because this piece is weird compared to the other pieces. All right, so if you notice on the pocket, on this one, it has a contrasting trim. What this piece is doing is it is covering this raw edge so that it is not going to fray on you. This is a bias piece. Bias, remember we talked about in a previous video, you've got your woven fabric goes this direction. It makes a right angle. Bias is at a 45-degree angle, okay? So if you notice on this piece, the arrow, in order to make that arrow go straight, the rectangle is then on an angle. This is super, super important. This is the piece I want you to be extra careful about when you cut it out, because this piece won't work right if you cut it straight. So see how this has a straight line? The straight edge follows that straight line. This one does not, okay? This is bias. Be very careful. Make sure that you are lining up your arrow with the edge of your fabric so that the arrow is straight with the edge of your fabric, okay? All right, last piece, piece number 10. This is the drawstring. It is another cut on fold piece. You can see that it's cut on fold because of those arrows. This is the drawstring. So here they are, the drawstring part. Essentially, this piece is as long, this piece may be longer than your fabric, and that's okay. You want your drawstring to at least be this width from selvage edge to selvage edge, okay? That's essentially what this one comes out to be. If this piece ends up being longer than your fabric, just roll with it. You actually will see when I cut mine out, this piece, when I fold, put it on the fold, ends up sticking out longer than my fabric. That'll be totally fine, okay? Another note on this piece is this has no seam allowance, okay? There's another piece that has a 0 seam allowance. This piece has a 0 seam allowance. So make sure you're watching and that you have that 0 seam allowance in your pattern pieces, okay? So those are all of the pieces, piece by piece. So let's get started on watching me lay out all of the pattern pieces and draw it out. You will see me use in the video, I'm gonna speed it up so you don't actually watch me and see the 45 minutes that it took me to trace it all out. I am in the video using a washable marker, in an orange washable marker, but I want you guys to use a pencil or something else that is easily removable. I'm only using a washable marker so that the lines show up really well in the video later on, because sometimes pencil lines don't show up very well on the video. So you'll see me use a marker. Don't use a marker unless that is the only thing that will mark on your fabric. I want you guys to use a pencil. Okay, let's get started on laying out and cutting out our pattern.
It's worth noting at this point that the grain arrow on my pattern piece is not going parallel with my selvage. That is because I have turned my pattern so that the stripe in my fabric is going up and down on my pattern piece. I realized later after I cut it out that I really didn't need to do that because the piece is the same both directions. It's a perfect square. These pieces are the bag sides, and again, I did turn the pattern piece so that the grain was going on the cross grain, not truly parallel to the selvage, because on this piece, it does matter which direction my pattern is turned in order to get those stripes going up and down on my fabric. Remember, piece number 9 is on the bias, so we have to rotate our pattern very carefully. Make sure you're extra careful when you do this piece. So I want to slow down a little and show you guys this piece being drawn out specifically. In order to fit all of the pattern pieces of my lining on this fabric, I am having to turn the grain. Normally the grain would be running this direction, this way, because this is the straight of grain. Because this is a woven fabric, I can actually turn this arrow to go this way, and that's what's going to make it fit. As long as my arrow doesn't go at an angle, we're on the bias there, as long as it's straight, either going up and down to the selvage or running parallel to it, okay? But since this has a curved edge, I wanted to slow down and let you guys see how I actually draw out the seam allowance. So let me grab my marker from the other side of the room and my ruler. Okay, and the pins. So this is straight with the cross grain. Pin it down, trace it out like I did all the other pieces. Marking my notches. And now since some of these edges are mostly straight, I'm going to use my ruler to mark those edges that are mostly straight first. But I'm going to stop and start my seam allowance line where it starts to curve. See that? Right here. From about there to there is mostly straight. And there to there. Okay, so now I have to deal with these corners. They're curved, they're not straight, so I need to actually measure that. What I do is I measure out, make a little tiny tick mark, and then turn my ruler and make another little mark. And I'm just making basically a dashed line around this curve. Until I'm able to connect to my straight line. See how that curve has appeared? Little tiny marks.
So that's how that curve happens. So we're going to speed up now, and you guys can see the rest of it being drawn out. I've got this piece and this piece, and then we're done. So all of my pieces are now traced out. I have not cut anything at all. I traced everything first to make sure I haven't missed anything and to make sure that I didn't waste any fabric, and I got it all to fit on my pieces. So this yellow is my lining, this green lime is my outer, or fashion fabric is another term. So everything's all drawn out here. Now I'm ready to cut. But before I do that, I want to triple check that I haven't forgotten anything, because there's nothing worse than being part of the way through a project and realizing you forgot to cut a piece, and then you're out of fabric, or you don't know what happened to it, you misplaced it. I'm going to pop in here real quick and say that after all of that, I did in fact actually miss a pattern piece. I missed piece number 7. So even if you're counting, it's possible to miss a piece. I realized as I was cutting everything out that I had missed this piece. So you actually need, I think I say you need 18 pieces total, and then I count them. No, that is incorrect. I need 19 pieces total, because that includes this one. So let's get back to what I was saying before. So according to our pattern pieces, we should have 18 pieces total that I need to cut out. So let's count those and see what they are. Every piece has been drawn out with the seam allowance, and I have numbered every piece so I know what pattern piece they correspond to. So I can find in my instructions, okay, like this is the bag flap because the bag flap is number 8. So back to the counting, how many pieces, to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. We've got 18 total. So on my fashion fabric, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Great, I have all 18 pieces. Now, what pieces end up being part of your lining fabric or your fashion fabric may depend on your choices. For example, the pocket that goes on the outside of our bag can be either your outer fabric or your lining fabric. I chose to make it contrasting and do it out of my lining fabric. There's a lot of contrasting choices that I made because I want that pop of color in my bag, that more pieces ended up on my lining than on my outer fabric. So we're ready to start cutting this out. Like before, I'm going to speed this up so you don't actually have to watch me cut it out. You can see the clock to see how long it's going to take me. So let's get started.